Hey everybody, welcome to our channel. Hey guys, we're your hosts, Em and Jay, and today the two of us wanted to talk about reboots. We're basically living in the age of reboots and remakes, some of which have been pretty successful, and others seem to have missed the mark. So we wanted to discuss our thoughts on what we think makes a successful reboot or remake. It can be kind of frustrating when it feels like everything's being remade and the quality is hit or miss, and it feels more like these remakes are happening so that the companies can cash in on nostalgia rather than remaking something for the love of it, or making something original because someone had a great idea and they really wanted to pursue it. But there are certain properties that could do really well with a remake. Maybe the original was really loved for its time, but parts of it haven't aged well, or maybe it was held back due to budget constraints, or maybe there's still opportunities because there's enough interest within audiences and the companies that own these properties to justify more stories. But in the case that a company does decide to reboot an old classic, we think a great place to start would be to look over all the previous material, whether it be animation or comic books, or really anything that has the name attached to it. For example, the new DuckTales reboot. You can tell the people behind the project are really big fans. They pulled from decades of material, not just the 1980s cartoon, but also the comic books and even video games. For example, Scrooge McDuck wears red in this cartoon instead of the blue he wore in the original 80s cartoon because it's closer to the design he had in the comics. And if they do decide to put original material into the project, it should feel like it was always meant to be there instead of something that's just tacked on. Like in DuckTales, they saw they had room to experiment with Huey, Dewey, and Louie's characters to give them more distinct personalities and differentiate them from each other. The next thing we think is important is the look of the show. It really needs to be recognizable. Ideally, people should be able to look at the promotional material and immediately think of the original. That way they can be reminded of good memories from before and get excited about what's to come. If it isn't recognizable, then what's the point really? Audiences might get confused as to why this new product has the same name as something they loved from their past, but looks totally different. One example is Thundercats Roar. Is Cartoon Network sure those are Thundercats? Cause they kinda look like thumbs. Honestly, if you're gonna deviate this much, a remake might not be worth it. Our next point is that we feel the reboot should have the same themes and spirit as the original show. Like if the original had a strong theme of family, that should be prominent in the reboot. This was the case with Disney's DuckTales, and the new show actually expanded on the theme of family by having Donald Duck as a main cast member, when in the original show he was shipped off to the Navy. They also focus on the boy's mother, which is something that's often glossed over in other Duck media. Expanding on the themes that were already present in the source material is a great way to keep the reboot fresh, but also have the same spirit as the original, just like they do with the new DuckTales. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there's removing strong themes from the original, like in Netflix's She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. The original had a strong relationship between its main character and her twin brother, yet the reboot ignores all of Adora's family, not just her brother, and some people even chose to interpret her relationship with her twin in a very negative way, which we don't appreciate for personal reasons. Removing these themes changes not only the character, but the show as a whole. That wasn't the only theme that was dropped from the original show, but if you're going to have a show that's called She-Ra and have it be so far removed from the original, why not just make an entirely new property? Another thing we feel is important when it comes to remakes is don't try to fix what isn't broken. Sometimes the original property did something so well that there's no way to improve on it, and if that's the case, don't change it. And don't try to change it, because it'll most likely just turn out to be a step down. For example, the animation in the original Lion King was bright, expressive, and colorful. The remake is very photorealistic, but ultimately it's still animated because it's just CGI, when this is being thought of as a live-action remake. And while it is impressive as it almost looks like a nature documentary, ultimately this animation doesn't really help tell the story. In the original movie, when Scar tells Simba to run away and never return, this is his reaction, but in the remake he looks like this. Because they're going for a photorealistic look, they aren't able to capture the same expression and emotion that the original could. The original animation allowed for more freedom in the expressions, because they didn't have to worry about trying to be realistic. They were just worrying about what would work best for the story. And ultimately, it worked better. But Disney's on this whole live-action remake kick, and this is as close as they can get with The Lion King. We mean no disrespect to the animators, it is impressive in its own right. It's just not what this story needs. Maybe they should just re-release The Lion King again in theaters. They've done it before, and it's done really well. The Lion King is just one of those movies that doesn't need a remake. Our last point basically comes down to marketing. How the staff talks about the original property and the remake that they're working on, along with how they interact with old and new fans. The DuckTales reboot did a great job of this, making a show that can be enjoyed by anyone regardless of their age or if they were familiar with the original.
Before it's even aired, they already picked up a season 2. So you guys must be excited about the reception already.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. I didn't grow up with the show. But people have such a kind of emotional attachment to it, which is amazing to be part of. I mean, one feels the pressure.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Do you guys feel the pressure of it?
Yeah.
It's the show we both watched growing up.
Yeah. And now all my friends are like having kids, and they're like, just don't mess it up. Don't mess it up. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. Don't mess it up.
The passion and enthusiasm from the cast and crew really reflects on the show. You can tell they're loving everything they're doing, and they really care about their audience, since they're fans themselves.
From the clip, you have nothing to worry about. You did not disappoint anybody.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Great. It's going to be a lot of that. It's like 48 episodes of that. It's going to be really good.
Hopefully more.
On the other hand, there was the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, which took a pretty negative approach when marketing its movie. First of all, the original trailer was poorly handled. It started out by calling back to the original, despite the fact that this movie was meant to be a reboot and had nothing to do with the original outside of the premise, along with the trailer falling flat overall with audiences. But instead of giving a valid response to this criticism, Sony decided to totally write it off as being from a disingenuous place and accusing everyone and anyone of being basically a bigot just for disliking their trailer, while choosing to ignore any valid criticism. They even went as far as attacking an online content creator just because he said he didn't want to see the movie. Netflix's She-Ra also took this approach when handling criticism, even going as far as to belittle the original show, despite the fact that many in the cast and crew admitted to never actually watching it, or just watching a couple episodes. They claimed the original characters were one-dimensional and pretty much only existed for the male gaze. If they really felt the original was so harmful to audiences, then why even have their project be associated with it? Why not just create a new IP? That way this kind of hostility could have been avoided. Companies want to use existing IPs so they can benefit from the already existing fan base. So it's important to build bridges between old fans and these new projects, and that needs to show through the marketing. At the same time, they need to get interest from new fans, and they might be able to do that by saying that the franchise as a whole is really cool and this is their chance to jump on board.
It's also a blend of the old sort of original comic books with this comedic style. So I think it's supposed to appeal to people like us who are also, I have kids now, that I can force my kids to enjoy the things I like too as a kid. So it's good.
Cross-generational.
There it is.
Wow.
There it is. He summed it up.
So
Ideally, that would get a positive response from the audience, which should be what these companies are going for. So those are our opinions on what should go into a reboot or remake. What do you guys think would be important to have? What are some of your favorites? We'd love to hear from you, so let us know your thoughts. Are there any properties you'd like to see come back? Or would you rather see more original IPs? But if you like this video, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell notification to see more content like this. We really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone! Bye guys!